And John, explain sort of the small nuances that you guys added to make Liz become more human.
Small nuances. I think the big thing for us was finding a way to make her your partner. And then also at the same time making her feel like a friend, almost. I would say that we looked at like the way partners move together. We tried to figure out like, well, what do they do really? They move together, and so when they're going someplace, she has a good idea of where you're going. And she, if you don't want to do that, wander off and explore the world, and she'll find a way to entertain herself. And she doesn't just kind of. I think said in that video, if she just stands there, it would have been horrible for us because it doesn't really bring you into the world as much as having her be interested in it and find things to do.
Well, I would say that probably one of the most important things is that in every room that she ends up in every space that she's exploring, we've gone through and made sure that things that would be interesting to any other human person are interesting to her as well. So we can also set up things in the world so that if there's something that we've discussed Elizabeth in her present state, then she's going to get facial expression showing you that she's disgusted by this thing. And so
there's some really magical moments that just come out of that. We've sort of set her up for that, but it just happens, and we're not controlling her at that point. It's just what she chooses to do, and when that happens, it's really great. I hope you all get to experience that when you play the game, because it's a really amazing feeling. I remember sometime late last year, Ken turned to us and he's like, "I just had this awesome moment," and we're like, "Well, we didn't really control that. It just sort of happens that way."
Did he hug you?
Yeah, that was a
It got weird. A good kind of weird. Courtney, talk about voicing her. Like, what were your inspirations for bringing her to life?
Well, this process was really great because Troy, who plays Booker DeWitt, and Ken and I, we would all get to work together. They would fly me and Troy out from California to Boston. We would all get to just sit in a room, and we had this really great collaborative effort, which is unlike any other project that I've ever worked on. I've never had that to this extent. So the inspiration was really just every time I would come out here to Boston, we would just sit and talk about Liz and talk about, what kind of character we wanted her to be and what kind of relationship we hoped that you as the player would be able to experience with her. And it was kind of, I would say, on a piecemeal basis, we were creating her and all kind of finding her together. Sometimes I'm sure Ken, well, a lot of times, all the time, he knew more than us because he would keep secrets from us, but and then release them when he desired. But yeah, we just got to figure her out and discover her little by little, which, I mean, that's exactly how you guys are going to be able to discover her. So we kind of had the same experience that you're going to, and I hope that in that experience you grow to love her the way that we do.
Now, we have a moment of that process where you're recording that we actually want to share with you guys. And why don't you just tell us a little bit and preface sort of the video. It's sort of like Troy and Ken are just berating you.
The berating
what's happening here?
So what's happening here is this was my callback. They flew me out to Boston to do the callback. And so I was jet lagged, exhausted, like emotionally exhausted. I think Heather had mentioned that she's doing all these things. I mean, you're running, you're screaming, you're crying, you're rescuing people, you're dancing. So just imagine going on a roller coaster. Like the voice exertion that you experience from screaming all day, it's like the same thing in this context. So my voice was completely wiped out. I was emotionally drained, and we had to get this scene right. So we went and I don't know if you call it method acting, but basically Troy screamed at me for about 5 minutes until I was emotionally able to get to the point of breaking down, which is the scene.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm not just saying.
How about if he berated you a bit?
Oh, what?
If he berated you a bit, berated you?
Yeah, sure.
What were you doing? What were you thinking? You're never gonna work. You're gonna get us fucking killed.
Like that.
Keep going.
Yeah, Troy, don't be afraid of her.
No, I'm not.
Really
I'm
go
not.
into her.
Yeah.
No, I just didn't want you to stop.
Fucking child.
Shut up.
You know, it's Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross beating up.
Makes me so uncomfortable. Keep going.
I don't care if you're uncomfortable or not. Pull it the fuck together. You've either got this or you don't. The fuck were you thinking?
Keep at her, Troy. Keep at her.
No, she's got it. She's need to fucking focus. Don't fucking laugh.
Okay, you were right. I can't control it. It's not possible.
With what I've seen lately, I wouldn't put a nickel on what's possible. Now, come on. I think it's time we found Comstock, okay?
Can we do it once more?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Will you yell, you fucking psychopath? Will you scream at me a little more? Wouldn't that be nice?
So there's two big parts to Liz, and more than that, but we have her voice, but we also have her physical body. Heather, talk to us about portraying Liz and sort of the physicality and the physical nature of that role. What were your inspirations, and can you share any anecdotes that you had while portraying her?
Yeah. Well, I had Courtney's amazing, vocal performance to work with, and that obviously gave me a lot to work with. But it was tricky because I had to physically and have the emotional, have it exude through me physically what was happening to Courtney at the same time, timing wise. So I had to emotionally get myself to the place where she got herself to at the same time, which is difficult, I mean, it takes people different timing. Maybe I would want to start crying earlier or later, but it had to be timed perfectly so it wouldn't look fake, like somebody was just going like this when they were, crying. You know what I mean? You have to really feel it and to make it truly alive. So she's one person. And so that was tricky, to find that for me, Usually as an actress, I, am able to vocally and physically do it at the same time. So, that was like a learning curve for me, but it really, after, getting into it, I said in the trailer earlier that I really did feel like it was my voice. I really just started to connect, so deeply with, what Courtney did, and Liz became a person, so.
I want to give Heather a little more credit here than she's giving herself, because not only was it a hard job to do that, because Courtney had this great vocal performance, and then to match that, but Elizabeth's movements are somewhat stylized, and I'm a clumsy oaf, and if you look at how she moves and how she dances and how she walks, and we wanted a stylization so her emotions could project further, because generally we didn't know how far Liz was going to be from you, and you should talk about all the recordings we had to do.
I think the problem with Liz and the way that she works systemically is that she has so many different things that she can do in the world, lockpicking and finding treasure, but her emotional arc throughout the game she changes. She's not the same person she is at the beginning. And so trying to figure out a way to make sure that all of the systemic voice stuff works while she's going on this emotional roller coaster. I mean, we would have voice recording sessions where at the end we just sort of take a half hour and I'm like, all right, read these 100 lines, Courtney. And she's like, didn't we do this last time? I'm like, yeah, but this time you're going to be sad. And she's like wanting to strangle me.
When you brought that up, I had like the PTSD reaction right here.
It's like, and then we're going to do a half hour. She's like, do we have to? And I'm like, no, it's going to work out just okay. We'll be fine.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, are you next to Booker? Or are you 100 feet from
Yes.
Booker? And so now do it loud.
Yeah, and
Be sad, but weird, but loud, but.
And she's like, how do you want me to say it this time? I'm like, I don't know, just go for it.
Well,
Figure it out.
I think just like you were saying about stylized, that's true. And I think having a theater background first helped me with that. You know, I was able to really find a character sort of outside in, and finding that physically. And when you're doing theater, oftentimes you're in a very large venue, so you have to really play to the back of the room. And that was something I sort of kept in mind, as well as, you know, what this world was that you know, Elizabeth is in. And so I was lucky and got the part.
So Drew and Ken, talk about the writing process for Elizabeth. What was the process for getting all of those lines of script onto paper and sort of bringing her to life through words?
Trial and error.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there were sort of two parts of Liz. One is the sort of the narrative scenes, which we knew would play out a certain exact way, which we had consistency on. And there's a way as a writer that you just, you know, there's a craft of writing which is very old and very traditional, which is, you know, finding characters and then, you know, having your plot and your 3 acts and making sure your characters are motivated. And I'm not going to turn it into a Sid Field lecture here, but, you know, there's some very standard writing things. But then there's these parts where we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what state the player is going to be. And we often think of, you know, doing a game like this it's like writing a scene where the lead actor is, you know, is a psychopathic alcoholic, because you don't know what the player is going to do, right? You know, they're unpredictable. You know, what the fuck are you guys going to do? You know, next minute. I should like chill. And that's the joy of it. It's like to have this improvisation between this character, that's this creation of all this artificial intelligence and all this voice acting and all this movement, and then the player. And sometimes when they get into sync, when you guys, you know, as a player, or when you guys play it, to get that into sync, because you have to respect the player and love the player, not fight against them. You have to make the game so it's the gamer's game, and you don't know what they're going to do, but you've got to kind of embrace that kind of lunacy. If you fight it and you keep wanting to lock the player into place, it's not the player's game, it's our game. But it's not our game, it's your game, and it has to be your game. But mixing that with such a character who's so specific was very challenging.
And there were sort of progressions in the way that a lot of Liz's game behavior started to come online, because there was really no blueprint to say, like, okay, we're going to have this many lines for her and she's going to have this many actions. It was, we'll put it in the game and then we see if that's enough. And John and Amanda are constantly coming to my desk and saying, we need more lines for this, and we just need something for Liz to, you know, she needs a bank of size, because the moment, like John was saying before, the moment that she doesn't feel like a person, and the moment she just sort of feels like she's just sort of static in the environment, then you stop believing in her, and at that point, we might as well just go home. Like, that's not Liz for us.
So we talked a little bit about her personality, physicality, her emotions and whatnot. Let's talk about how you implement that actually in the game. Let's start with combat. Like, what were your goals for how Liz would work and function in the game when it comes to combat?
I think our I think our biggest goal for her was to make her feel like a partner in combat as well. And making that feel fluid was, I think, the real difficult thing for us. Like, we came up with the idea of having her toss you something in combat, and at first we start out from a very clunky space where it would happen, and you would need to like look at her and press the button, and it just felt very like wrong in terms of how like it didn't feel like you could be concentrating on combat while she was offering something to you. And so making that work and finding the right things for that took a little bit of time, but I think where we ended up was a great place.
Yeah, it was very mechanical originally, where you had to basically do the way she wanted it to be done rather than the way the player wanted to be done. We always try to make things player-centric, and the problem with making things player-centric is the player's completely unpredictable. So, but if you had to turn and wait for Elizabeth to do something, it got really frustrating. So that was a huge challenge to get right.
Yeah, and especially like it was very player-centric. So making that, like, I knew when I came on to working on Liz that was wrong, and we needed to fix that. And I wanted to make it so that she was going to be ready for you if you wanted it. If you didn't want it, fine. But as soon as you did it, it was going to be smooth, and you're back in combat right away, because that's the player's not. When I like to say this at work, but when you're in combat, the details of the player fall away. So if she's if she becomes this important thing that you have to have some sort of relationship with to get the weapon, then that's not what we want at all. We want it to be, you press the button, you get it you're back in combat right away. So
Amanda, talk a little bit about what you did to sort of make sure that Elizabeth just didn't get in the way, as some AI people or partners can do in games. That happens.
Oh, gosh, yeah, it does. The default for any sidekick character in a game is annoying. I'm sure you've all experienced it. So, thank you. Every time you're trying to make Elizabeth a better companion character to, experience the game with, when you first kind of, take her out of the AI box and put her in the world, she's going to be incredibly annoying, and she's going to walk into walls and bump into things and fall through holes and do the whole terrible thing that you just, every time she does that, it's like, oh yeah, she's an AI. And you go, oh. So generally the first thing that you end up doing is making sure that her awareness of the world is absolutely impeccable. She has these incredible eyes that she can see the world in a completely different way from, a human being or an AI can see. And so it's up to us, Crombie and the rest of the Liz squad, to make sure that Liz can see everything that's important to her. So being able to see that that's a doorway and that she can walk through that, and this is a set of stairs and she's going to walk down the stairs in a particular way. And I just have to say, sometimes I would go, that animation's impossible. Liz could never run that fast in heels down those stairs. And then I'd be told that actually Heather did that. What? No. So,
My many skills.
it's incredible. So yeah, making sure that Elizabeth understands the world in a way that a human being would be able to understand is absolutely of vital importance.
It's a good segue, a Greg way, in fact. Let's talk a little about how Liz interacts with the environment. You guys mentioned that a little bit earlier. What were your goals with how you would have her interact with everything naturally and not either stand around looking bored or just be sort of a chatterbox that didn't seem connected with what was happening?
I'm going to do the thing I go, can we have the slide, please? With Elizabeth and what she can see in the world. Oh, well, that's good too. So with Elizabeth, everything that she can do and everything she can interact with is a little piece of information in the world that we've placed. So we're going to do some other slides now, it's fine. This works as well. This is one I thought it was going to be. So on the left here, you can see one of the views that you might actually see in BioShock Infinite. And it's this incredible portrait of a woman who's important to the game world. And to us, we go, oh, this is interesting. And we can say, it's a significant dress that she's wearing, and generally
it's
human.
Lit well,
Yeah,
as a person, you can see, like, hey, this is important. It's right in front of me as I walk in the room. And
yeah, and human beings just naturally, they'll look to the face and they'll look to the eyes. We're just built that way as, human beings. But Elizabeth doesn't, out of the box have that kind of functionality. To her, this would have just been a blank piece of, geometry in the world. So Liz Squad and level designers would go through and make sure that we made everything that was like this of importance to her. So for example, all of these crazy little eye symbols are what we see in the editor. So we've gone through, and one of our level designers went a bit mad here, and added all of these different symbols to say, hey Liz, this is something that's important to you. And in the properties of these things, we can say this is important to you, and this is in fact the most important thing in the room. And if there's anything else going on, it's not really anywhere near as interesting as this is. And we can say, you can look at this for a certain number of seconds, or you can go, you've glanced at it, it's time to go and have a look and see if there's something else. And so for things like this, we're making sure that everything that's important to her, she's going to take a look at, but always making sure that if the player decides, I'm not terribly interested in portraiture, and starts running off, that Liz will go, well, neither am I then. We've got things to do and we've got, a city to explore.
So to do that, you guys actually have to come up with a way to have Liz interact with stuff that she finds interesting. So we had that video, actually. Can we go back to that? And it's over.
Please wait.
We're on.
There we go.
There we go.
So now, talk about what this is and what's happening here.
So this is an early test that Sean Robertson and his team were doing in terms of we place objects in the world and we build animations related to those objects, but we don't know where it's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And we wanted Liz to be drawn to things, and then she had a bank of animations and sound effects and emotion, but her face could be in different emotional states. She could be walking in different ways depending on where she is emotionally. And basically, she's this giant, I hate to say this, but she's a giant machine, you know, full of all this human content, all this writing, all this acting, all this animation, all this motion capture, all these sort of, all these things that can happen but may or may not. And out of this sort of machine and all this human content put in, we try to yield this person. And when it started to, and boy, did it not work for a long time. It was, you know, I equate it to, if you know anything about the movie Jaws and the shark, that just didn't work, and it never worked, and it never worked. And they knew, well, we're making a movie about a shark, and the shark doesn't fucking work. You know, and there was a problem, you know, Spielberg had a problem, and we had the same problem where we had all this great content, but the machine to make it work was so complex that there's so many edge cases figuring out how to make it work, and she was not working until actually fairly late in the game, and we had some very dark nights going. In fact, a lot of people saying, yeah, what if we just cut Elizabeth out of the game? And and it wasn't because people didn't like the acting or the emojis, just because all the things weren't coming together in a believable way. And John really sort of corralled this team of people, and we made a group called Liz Squad. And
I feel like the same thing happened with the Big Daddies and Little Sisters to some extent. Like
Yep.
it was just this thing we were trying to do that was so different from what was really out there, that we didn't necessarily understand what the vision was, and it took a while for us to all understand what that was going to be. And once it clicked, it was an amazing experience. Like we were trying to create this character who was interested in the world, and she was interacting with it, and she had opportunities to do things. But we have, like Ken said, like a psycho player who doesn't need to follow the path that she wants to do. So understanding how to deal with that sort of psycho, or the person who's a visitor and wants to casually check everything out, dealing with both sides of that fence and making it work so Liz will find things to do when either player is playing. It was a real tough experience for us. But once it clicked, it really came together, and it felt very natural. And for either player, like whether you want to blast through the game, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a lot more fun to experience it as a tourist, but if you want to, you can, and it should handle it just fine. But for the person who's a little bit more wants to go in deeper and check out the world, she has a lot of things that she can do in the game.
Yeah, we've had that experience of like where we work on, we do all this incredible amount of work to make sure Liz can interact like in depth in every single room in the space, and then you watch one tester just like, and it's heartbreaking, but it's a game. It's the gamer's game, and we want to make sure the game works for people who do that as well as the people who stop and just like, look at every nook and cranny.
It makes the experience personal. I think my experience playing the game is going to be different from John's, different from Ken's, different from yours, and I think that the fact that Liz is able to sort of read each person, right? That's what really builds that true partnership. It's not just you're not just building this emotional relationship with Liz through the narrative. It's about the gameplay. It's about she's helping you in combat. It's all that that it's all ingrained in the game, and I think that's really something that's why it was so hard is making sure that it never fell apart.
And getting to that point Getting to that point was a scary thing. Like when it clicked, it definitely felt amazing because, on previous projects with the Little Sisters and the Big Daddies, the same thing. Like getting that to the point where it clicked, and once it did, and the team was coming up to us and saying like, I had this special thing that happened with Liz, and it was an amazing experience.
So guys, we're starting to wind down here, but we want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions if you'd like to. We have mics set up in both aisles, so if you'd like to jump up there. We ask that the questions be brief and be related to what we're talking about today. Please don't ask what they're going to work on next. Don't ask them about the PlayStation Vita version of the game. I already did. They didn't say anything. Right? But before we get to your questions, we posted an article on IGN a couple weeks ago asking for reader questions to give away a copy of the game, and we're going to read a question from one of the IGN readers. Manny GR1 asks, and Manny's going to win a copy of the game, yay. Elizabeth seems to be an incredibly realistic person, Her personality is shown off through various mannerisms and facial expressions. Were there any quirks or habits of particular people in your lives that directly influenced the behavior of the AI and of Liz?
I would just say I have a theater background as well, and like looking at Liz as a character in a show or in a theater was certainly something I look towards for that.
I would say there's actually one thing that we removed from the game that that I think may have come out from working the long hours that we did at the end of the game. We had this quirk that Liz would occasionally she'd quietly just yawn to herself, you know, just if things were quiet and nothing else was going on. And I think it was probably because quite a few of us were finding little corners to have a bit of a yawn as well. But surprisingly, we got rid of that because occasionally, ever so occasionally, she would do it in a slightly inappropriate moment. And it'd be like, you know, oh, this terrible thing has happened. What are you doing, Liz?
The last thing you want to is the players just nice exploring the world and having a fun time, and Liz is like, You're like, what the hell? Is this not interesting enough for you, Liz?
So it's just the tiniest thing will just make you go, dude, what? I'm busy here. Like, oh, so things like that. You never think that it would be a problem until you've actually got it in the game. You go, oh no, we can't have this. No, let's never speak of this again.
All right, let's take some questions. Let's start over here. And remember, since there's a lot of people in line, let's try and keep it brief.
Hello, my name is Rebecca, and I'm so excited to see you. My question is basically about Liz and reference to marketing for that. And obviously it has nothing to do with your decisions as creative people, but how you feel about it. When I first saw Liz, I was just taken away by her. I think she's just incredible, and she's a wonderful addition. Like, even though she's like the person who's helping out and not like a main character, you know, she's great, and I love her. And this today, I'm able to see how much you love her too. So when the cover was announced and she was on the back of it, I just wanted to know how you felt about that decision.
I mean, just in the interest of time, I think we talked about this a bunch, and I've sort of given my rationale and the marketing rationale.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think you guys have reviewed the game, and you guys are going to be able to play it in a couple of days, and I think you can see the amount of love we have for her. It's important that these games, you know, I learned on BioShock, I learned on System Shock, which didn't sell. It's important that these games are successful because otherwise there are no more of these games. And there are decisions you make in terms of marketing the product. It's a single image on the cover of the box, which is this big. And yeah. I would love to do one of those Struzan, kind of next to that. One of those posters, like the Star Wars or Indiana Jones, where you have all the characters and all these scenes, but the damn thing is this big. Yeah. And we've had the experience of making box covers that I think can be alienating to people. And I always tell the story of, and be very quick here, when I saw the System Shock 1 box, which was, that game changed my life. I saw that box and I was like, picked it up in the store. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I have no idea. And I put it down. And I'm not saying our box would have had that if Elizabeth was on it, but a box cover is so important. I didn't pick up that game until several years later, and that was the game that changed my life. And I may not have bought it if there was something on it that put me off. And we just did a lot of testing, and we love the girl, but that's where the testing ended up. And I would just say play the game, forget out the fucking cover if you don't like it.
Okay. All right, over here.
Hi there. I was just, so obviously your philosophy, as you've stated multiple times, is that it's all player-centric. Everything has to be subservient to the player. How do you preserve the integrity of a character, especially one that isn't dominant like a GLaDOS or a Heresy? I don't remember the name of the robot from System Shock 2. How do you preserve the? Yes, Hal. I believe it was Robbie, or maybe it was Rosie. I can't remember. But yeah, how do you preserve the integrity of the character when that character has to sort of just go where you go, and you're an insane kleptomaniac psychopath, as the player character inevitably will become?
Well, that was the experiment, and I think that, really the answer is the game, and it was I think probably the number one challenge is figuring that out in the game, and then executing on that and making sure that Elizabeth respected the player, but also Elizabeth maintained her own identity. And right from the very beginning, there's a scene, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't say, but early on, there's a point where Elizabeth's very clear about her opinion about what the player does in a very, very strong way. And we always want to walk that line to make sure that she was a person with her own life, her own goals, her own view on the world. And in fact, I don't view her as a support character. In a lot of ways, I think she's the lead character in the game. And if you look at traditional sort of narrative, Booker and her are at least co-leads, if not Liz is maybe even the lead.
I think Liz is the lead.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say. Good job, Ken. Who's next?
Hi there. One really quick thing. One of my friends, he had a really high fever and he wasn't going to come to the panel, and we dragged him here. And he told me to read.
I'm sure everybody appreciates that.
He told me to read something to you just real quick. He said, "Tell Kenny L he looks like Steve Carell for me." So I don't really see it, but he told me to tell you. And he's back in line. He's the dude in the gray shirt back there. So yell at him when he gets up here.
I hope he feels better.
I'm a writer. I like science fiction stuff a lot. And I was wondering, so BioShock for me, BioShock 1 is the game that changed the way I look at video games. It absolutely, the emotional response I had to the whole Big Daddy, Little Sister thing and all the audio logs, it blew me away. I've never had a video game treat me like that before. It was amazing. And I was wondering, from a writing standpoint, how worried are you about the player relating to the characters in the game, and how do you go about making them more accessible so you feel that emotional connection?
It's different in every game. It's different in every story you write. It's always a challenge to write characters that are, even if it's just you're writing a play, if this was a play, you want to make characters that you buy into, that you care about. And I think a lot of it is, this is going to sound really stupid, but go watch Disney films. Because there's this moment, and we have this moment in our own weird BioShock way. In the game, at the beginning of every Disney film, Belle or Little Mermaid or whatever does what they call an I want song. That's how they define it at Disney, an I want song. And it's, I want to be where the people are, I want to see them dance. And what that song does is it gets the audience on board for that character. Because people want to know what people want, and they want to root for that person. And with a villain, it's sort of it's somewhat the same, is you have to sort of have a character that you get them, you get why they're in the world and what they want. And, with Andrew, whether it's Andrew Ryan or Comstock or Shodan, you have to say, like, okay, he's kind of an asshole, but I get it, and I think that's really important as a writer. You have to respect and you have to get into the shoes of each of those characters.
Wonderful, thank you.
We have time for a couple more.
Thank you. I love what I've seen from Infinite, but more my question relates to System Shock 2. Quick thing. After you leave med-sci and go into engineering, you leave, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can tell it. Right on your way towards the cargo bay, you get that flash from the annelids. And was that supposed to lead into like you choosing whether to work with the annelids, or was it going to lead into more like you could either really go this way or you can go that way, or was that just like a warning of like how powerful what's invaded this ship really is?
No, we never contemplated sort of that kind of choice because we just we wouldn't even have the bandwidth to even contemplate something like that at that point. It was exposition, basically. It's like, who are these guys and what the fuck do they want? And we try to do it in a visual way. And that was sort of one of our first experiences of really trying to visually express a culture and a society in that weird dreamlike sequence. But we never contemplated a choice of any kind.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Russ. I know in BioShock we were introduced to the minor villains like Sander Cohen and Steinman. I was wondering if in Infinite, do you have characters like that, like minor villains?
What villains?
Like just the minor ones, like.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go to Infinite looking for a play-by-play replication of anything in BioShock. It is, I think it's definitely a BioShock game, and there are definitely, it's a pretty broad cast of characters like BioShock 1, but we were never trying to say like, okay, who's our Sandra Cohen, or who's our this, or who's our that. But there's lots of interesting minor characters like that who own levels.
Thank you.
So BioShock might be probably the best game this current generation. How does it feel to try and, I wouldn't say reproduce it, but try and supplant it? And the second question I had was, would you kindly sign my copy of BioShock?
I want to.
Actually, I have a funny story about this. We were at GDC right after BioShock came out, and BioShock had won a bunch of awards. And I was walking back with Ken and his wife to the hotel, and I said to Ken, wow, we're really on top of the world right now. And Ken said, yeah, but now we got to do it again. So hopefully we did. Hopefully you all enjoy it as much as you did with BioShock, even more perhaps.
Then we have to do it again.
But then we have to do it again.
Oh, no, don't say that. Irrational doing BioShock admitted too. I think we're always interested in doing something different, and I think that all these games are kind of different. I think if you try, and this is just general life advice. Well, I'm taking life advice from me. You really rethink things, but trying to recapture, that high, you become that guy at the high school reunion who is the captain of the football team, and you're just trying to redo something and recapture an experience you had before. So I think we knew from the very beginning, just redoing it would, and trying to get that same feeling again for us was not the way to go, and that's why we sort of did something so different.
Thank you.
BioShock's been known for, the first two have been known for very survival horror, more or less horror, very creepy atmospheres. And now with Infinite, you basically flip the script, go a complete opposite color palette, everything else. And more or less with what I've seen here with Elizabeth, kind of also complements that, going complete opposite. My question is, for the two, the voice and the lead actress, the model actress, how did you guys work together? Wonderfully, seemed very seamlessly. It seemed like very hard. What were any kind of inspiration to be frightened, excited, action-orientated within this very bright, sunny, yet creepy and survival horroristic atmosphere that has been created?
Well, think about it. What's creepier than being terrified in the daylight? Like, you expect to be kind of a little scared at night, right? But when you have this world of civil unrest and you have all these really fucked up things, and you're in like this bright world, I think that's even more terrifying. And I know that some people were afraid that because it was visually so different that it would lack that fear factor, I guess, if you want to call it that. I think this does even more so than BioShock did, because of what I just said.
Yeah, I agree. Something that Courtney and I were talking about last time was that, what's more scary? Having somebody, come up and, be like really mean and look scary in your face, or someone that's smiling and coming after you like really eerily, and that's what sort of that sunny day is like, it's so beautiful, but yet there's that underlying like fear, and I think it totally layers the game.
So yeah, like I said, I saw the evil, the panel last year, and I was just blown away, like, wow, they're going complete opposite, and it's still complete opposite color palette, and I'm still scared. So, anyways, thank you very much, guys. Can't wait for Tuesday.
Yay! Thank you.
Hey, I just want to start off and say thank you so much for what you've given us, the gift of BioShock. It is one of my favorite games. My biggest question for you was, my favorite part of BioShock 1 and 2 was all the backstory that came through the recordings and everything. are we going to be getting that type of experience in Infinite, and will it be in a similar fashion?
I would say the level of detail in the world in Infinite, you know, there's audio recordings, yes. There's these great, what are they called? The kinetoscopes that Bill Gardner led and Drew worked on, and which are like little, remember in old penny arcades where you look in the little wooden thing and you see this little movie?
Mm-hmm.
There's I don't know how many of those. There's 40 of those. Just a lot of those little movies. There's people there's living people, so they're talking to each other. There's so much story in this game that I don't think you're going to be the opposite of disappointed if you're looking for details about the world. There's just tons of detail about the world.
Thank you so much. I'm crawling out of my skin to play this game right now. Thank you.
Hi, I played BioShock when I was in 8th grade, and I'm a senior now. I'm graduating, and
Rated M for mature.
I just want to say quickly, it's one of the games that actually inspired me to want to become a game designer. So just want to say, great job on that game. I love it. And I was curious, did you base any real life experiences off of the relationship between Booker and Elizabeth on how they interact with each other? Because I remember seeing an interview before about how you were talking about your relationship with a girl with Elizabeth at one point.
Yeah, I mean, look, you always draw. I mean, these words come from somewhere, and they come. If you don't have any experiences, you can't write anything, and you never translate anything one to one. You can't. I mean, look at this game. It's obviously fantastical, but you always have to try to find a way to get into the head of these characters. And your life is it's a great source, but it's not. I wouldn't say any of it is specifically exactly autobiographical in any way, shape, or form. We're creating characters, and we just draw upon whatever tools we have.
No, I think it starts with what Ken was saying before. What do these characters want? And they want something very badly, and you sort of step back and think about your life and things that you've wanted very, very strongly. And then your imagination starts to take it from there.
Thank you very much. Great job on the game. I'm really excited for Tuesday.
Thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to know, what was your inspiration to make Liz a real living, human? Because in BioShock 1 and 2, your only real friend was your radio.
Just a personal aspiration to have something be on the radio. As a friend. I think it's something, look, if you look at gaming, where do we want it to go? We want to have experiences with characters, I think. That's my feeling. And I think these are baby steps. I think people will look back on with the work we're doing now, if we're lucky, they'll look back at it as remember that period before there were talkies and, they had all these, they were figuring out how to do reverse camera angles and stuff like that. But I think I'm pretty confident games need to go where the characters are. And not just scripted scenes where you have no interaction, but where you are participating in that. And that's why we don't do cutscenes, because we're not making movies. We're making games. We're making experiences where you matter as an audience, where you have not as an audience, as a participant. Thank you. And it's hard, and I think these are baby steps. But if we even capture a few moments where you forget that you're you, and you forget that she's a complicated robot, essentially, then I think I'll be very happy.
Thank you.
I was wondering from a gameplay standpoint, am I going to have to worry about Liz's health at all and killing something urgently in that?
Never. What? Yes, Liz can take care of herself. She is your partner, not your escort mission, not your child. She is a grown woman who can take care of herself, and if anything, she's on the spot for Booker all the time, giving him, helping him out, hooking him up. She worries about his exactly. She worries about his health. They're great. Those clutch moments where you're about to die, and it's not always, because we have to do this within the balance of the game. And you're things flashing red. You're oh my god, and then you hear Booker, and you turn, and she tosses you the health kit, and you grab it out of the air. that's what it's about, not about babysitting.
No, no.
All right, guys, we have time for one more question.
Oh, you had also mentioned, sorry, like her reaction to different scenarios. Like, how would she react if I were to take a gun to her head or something like that and go psycho?
How about we just not try that? Game over.
For Courtney's sake, please.
I would say try it and see.
Okay, we have opposite views on that then.
Thank you. All right, one more question.
Hi, my name is Matt. You guys have stated that for you guys creatively, you want to move on and do something different. You don't want to be rehashing the same thing, and you want to move on, try something new. How did you, from moving from BioShock to this game, what did you learn from that game, from doing the Big Daddies? What did you want to improve upon them and use to inform where you went?
I mean, for me, people ask me like, "Oh, is the Big Daddy in this game the handyman? Is it the songbird?" The sort of counterintuitive answer for me is the Big Daddy in this game is Elizabeth, in the sense that the Big Daddy you remember for he was cool and he had a drill and he fought you and he was awesome, but I think the reason people connected to him. Do we have a picture of the cosplay? Yeah, we do. The reason people connected to the Big Daddy and Little Sister was because they had a relationship. And in a first-person shooter, the last thing you expect is a relationship and to have a sense of connection. And this is my favorite thing in the world, because you see these fathers and daughters cosplaying the Big Daddy and Little Sister. And it's not because of the drill, it's not because of the suit, it's because of that connection they have as characters. And in BioShock 1, you were observing a relationship, and in Infinite, we really wanted you to be the one having that relationship, and that was the big challenge here. And I think, if we look back on the game, personally, that's the thing that's most important to me in the game.
Well, guys, thank you so much for attending. Let's give it up for Ken, for Drew, for John, for Courtney, for Amanda, for Heather. And just remember, BioShock Infinite comes out on Tuesday, March 26th, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PC. For all your BioShock Infinite news, stay tuned to IGN.